Welcome to the Pint Glass Football Podcast.
What's up, PGF Nation? We are back. We had three NFL teams collapse on Sunday. Sheduer Sanders gets a win in his first NFL start. Rams make a statement win over the Bucs, and so did Oregon over USC. A lot more to get to, but I'm your host, Brad Fowler. Joining me, as always, my co-host, Alex Higdon. Alex, what is going on?
You know what, Brad? Kind of a slow day in college for the most part, but the NFL had a lot of close games.
Yeah, some crazy games. We're going to get into some of these. And like I mentioned there in the intro, we had some teams just flat out collapse. And I want to start with the Indianapolis Colts, who had the Kansas City Chiefs on the ropes in this game and really might have had their season on the ropes. Because if Kansas City loses their games, I think I saw one of those next-gen stats said that they only would have a 22% chance of making the playoffs if they would have lost this game. Colts get a big lead, really kind of gave this game away. And I've got multiple thoughts on this game, but up 20-9 at one point, Kansas City fumbles in the red zone. At that point, I'm thinking there is no way they should lose this game. And this is where I think it's a total collapse, because after that fumble, Shane Steichen's offense goes 3 and out on consecutive drives. Just one of the 9 plays on those drives, they hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor. I really didn't understand the play calling late. And Daniel Jones just couldn't do anything for this team in the second half. I mean, 18 total fourth quarter yards for Daniel Jones. He missed multiple open receivers, didn't push the ball down the field at all. They couldn't move the ball in the fourth quarter or in overtime. And they let Kansas City get back into this game and get knocked off. This was a gut punch for the Colts.
I think it's kind of what our resident Kansas City Chief fan Quick said. He said they got scared. They went into Kansas City and they got scared. They played timid. They only ran the ball. They only ran the ball with Jonathan Taylor 16 times, the leading rusher, a guy who's been having a big play after big play every single game for the most part. This was his worst game. So they didn't utilize their best weapon. I also thought they were very conservative getting the ball down the field on only one pass down the field to Ashton Doolin. I think it was about a 50-yarder. Other than that, I think everything was kept 5 to 12 yards for the most part, as if Daniel Jones hadn't been showing you within this offense that he was ready to kind of maneuver and unleash. You mentioned the fumble. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that was a red zone interception. I think Patrick Mahomes threw another red zone interception, if I recall correctly. They did not do anything with it. They sacked them 4 times. They lost this game more than Kansas City won this game. Kansas City did do their job defensively. So did the Indianapolis Colts. Outside of overtime, this was a 20-20 game. They held them at 20 points. And Patrick Mahomes almost threw the ball 50 times. So this was really, to your point, this was really more on Indianapolis being scared and not running the ball. The big key in this whole game, Kansas City had the ball 43 minutes to Indianapolis 26 minutes. That's really the story of the game.
Yeah, and you hit on something there, too, about being overly conservative. It's like they didn't play to win this game. They played not to lose. They got really tight in this game. Shane Steichen got overly conservative. 4th and 3, that 4th and 3 play in the fourth quarter, they decided to punt. And Romo said it on the broadcast. He said, I would go for it here. And at the time watching that game live, I agreed. I thought that's a moment where you got to be aggressive and try to move the ball there and keep the ball away from Mahomes, because you punt to Mahomes, you know what's going to happen. It's exactly what happened. They come back and score. And once again, on 4th and 1 from their own 40-yard line, they punt. They kicked a field goal on 4th and 4 in the red zone, and 4th and goal from the 5-yard line in this game, a 4th and 3 on the opening possession, and they decided again to punt, knowing that Mahomes only needed a field goal in overtime. So it was just overly conservative. I just didn't like the way Shane Steichen coached this game, and I think it really came back to bite him in this one, because when you've got that kind of lead on a team like the Chiefs that you know is going to keep fighting till the end, you've got to deliver the knockout punch. You've got to put these guys away, and they just didn't do it. Now, bigger picture here, the Colts made the move for Sauce Gardner a few weeks ago at the trade deadline. They gave up first-round picks because it showed me that they believe in Daniel Jones. And I think this is kind of the bigger conversation now, because we've seen him kind of take a couple steps back here in recent weeks. And look, I don't think Daniel Jones is the guy that we saw in New York, and I don't think he's the guy we saw in the first month of the season. I think he's somewhere in between. But it has to make you wonder, is he good enough even with a really good team around him, is he good enough to be the guy to carry this team to a championship level team?
I totally agree with that because they did give up their 2 first-round picks, and I don't believe Daniel Jones is dead. I don't believe it, but they're telling us he is. I think defenses are kind of slowly catching up to what they're doing. It'll be more interesting to see what they do next year. But if they don't have this type of running game, I don't know what Daniel Jones is with a pedestrian and emphasis on pedestrian running game and see what he's like.
Cowboys have a huge comeback from down 21-0 in this game. They come back to win 24-21. Look, I think Eagles fans who have been openly skeptical of the OC and Nick Sirianni, I think they got even more fuel for their fire on Sunday after watching this performance. I mean, the Eagles just can't run the ball. And look, we're too far into the season now. This is a big enough sample size to say that this is who they are. This is a team that built their entire identity was built around the run game and great defense. And when they can't run the ball, they're just not the same team. The Eagles opened the game picking on that Cowboys secondary, moving the ball through the air. They were up 21-0, and it looked like the route was on. I mean, at that point, it looked like the Eagles were going to run away from this game, and then they go scoreless for the final 41 minutes of this game.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we saw was they were playing a little bit zone man. I think they had a little bit of man coverage on A.J. Brown, which is what he excels at. He had 8 catches. He had 10 targets, 8 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown. Devonta Smith, 6 catches, 89 yards. So the passing was there. To me, this is all about the rushing. Again, Jalen Hurts, you can win Super Bowls. You know, everybody doesn't have to be elite Mahomes or some type of Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen quarterback type. The majority of Super Bowls have been won by tier 2 quarterbacks. I know we went through a long route with obviously with Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, but for the most part, they've been won by tier 2 quarterbacks. But you have to have a full team around it. I don't know what it is because Jalen Hurts was fine. He missed a few throws, or there were some things I saw. But the offensive play calling here, Saquon Barkley, 10 carries for 22 yards. Tank Bigsby, 1 carry for 8 yards. You have to have more carries. You have to balance this out because one thing's for certain, 2 things are for sure. We know that the Cowboys improved their front 4, but they didn't improve the defensive backfield at all. They added Sharon Ravel in terms of a guy that's a rookie that came back from injury, but they didn't get better back there. So you needed to keep them honest so that they can bring those safeties up. You needed to run the ball. Play action wasn't working when Saquon is running 10 for 22. And I'm going to continue to say, I think something's wrong with Saquon. I see a little bit of shiftiness here. I see a little bit of shiftiness there. But the whole package that we saw last year, and I'm not asking for 2,000 yards, there's something missing there. I know that the offensive line is injured and they've taken a step back. I know they have a new offensive coordinator. But at some point, you have to get Saquon Barkley in space, even if you just want to throw him the ball. He did have 7 catches for 52 yards, but, screen passes, wheel routes, you have to get Saquon Barkley involved more in this offense if you want to make another run at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they've got to find a way to get him more involved. And you're right, the Cowboys' front is better than it was. The Quinnen Williams addition clearly has given them something, but watching this game, Quinnen Williams, as far as facing Barkley and having any impact there, Barkley had 9 true carries. Williams wasn't on the field for 2 of them. 2 others were outside runs that were nowhere near the defensive tackle, and a couple more were runs away from his side of the field. Williams did have a tackle for a loss on Barkley in the first quarter, but that was not the reason that Barkley couldn't run the ball. They are not getting this guy going, to your point, and it's killing this offense, and it's killing the consistency because they just have no consistency in what they're doing. And we've seen this a few times now from the Eagles this year. They scored 21 points in the first half against the Cowboys in the opener, and then only 3 points over the last 30 minutes of that game. They were up 24-3 on the Buccaneers by halftime and only put up 7 points the rest of the way. This is just a consistent theme from them. And the bottom line is this is a devastating meltdown from Philly. You cannot lose a 21-0 lead to a division rival like this.
Yeah, and now don't look now, but the Cowboys are 5-1. I don't know what the future holds for them because this is a team that's still trying to, get the defense right. Obviously, offensively, they can score. They face Kansas City on Thursday at home. Then right after that, they have to go to Detroit. I think those 2 games are going to tell the whole story for the rest of the season, because I do believe they can beat Minnesota, the Chargers, the Commanders, and the Giants without an issue. But these next two games are going to tell a story about what type of team they're going to be.
Yeah, you mentioned the Lions. Let's get to that game because this was a crazy finish. This was not a game I really expected to talk about, but it ended up being a really competitive ball game. Goes into overtime. Lions end up sneaking by the Giants. And this is now the fifth time this season that the Giants have blown a 10 or more point lead. And this has become a consistent theme. It's a big reason why they let Daboll go earlier this year, is because they just cannot finish teams off. It happened again in this game. And when I look at this Lions team, look, this is a win, but I don't know if this is a very impressive win. I don't know if it's a win you really get excited about as a Lions fan. They have clearly taken a step back. They used to absolutely smash bad teams like this. The Giants were the worst run defense in the NFL going into this game. And here's another question, Alex. What analytics guy told New York to go for it on that fourth down near the goal line, up 3 late in the fourth quarter? I mean, I know these guys all have analytics teams, but what was that decision about? Kick the field goal there and force them to score a touchdown to beat you. I do not understand that play call.
I will honestly say, without knowing anything, that Jameis Winston, motioned to them, went to the sideline and said something that says we can get that, and probably preaching to the coach convinced him that they should go for it. And also you have a new coach that's sitting there that's trying to make a mark for himself, that because if they get that, they more than likely put the Lions away. I know the field goal, just by nature of what happened there, they would have won. But I think if they scored the touchdown, and then especially how Jameis Winston was playing, who was my player of the week? Jameis Winston, 18 for 36, 366 yards, 2 TDs, and an interception. Oh, and by the way, he also caught a 33-yard touchdown where he broke a tackle and went into the end zone. However, you still got the full Jameis Winston experience with that interception. And a few things. Jameis Winston is absolutely the most entertaining quarterback in the league, bar none. But I will say, Wan'Dale Robinson and Jameis Winston early on in this game had a great connection. They were connecting all over the field. Isaiah Hodgins with a beautiful catch and toe tap in the back of the end zone. They laid it all out there, and even with that 33-yard from Gunner to Jameis Winston. But alas, Jahmyr Gibbs going crazy with 246 total yards and 3 touchdowns rushing and passing. They were able to do their job, but this game should not, from my perspective, should not have been as close as it was and gone into overtime.
Yeah, you're right about Jameis Winston. It also gets me thinking that what was Brian Daboll seeing in the preseason and during camp that made him think for 1 second that Russell Wilson should be the starter out of these 3 quarterbacks? I mean, what did he see? Because Jameis Winston is clearly a much more capable player at this point of his career than where Russ is right now. And then, of course, Jackson Dart. I understand not starting Jackson Dart at the start of the year because you have a rookie, you kind of want to ease him in. But in what world has Jameis Winston not been night and day better than anything we've seen from Russ this year? I know he's got some up and down play. That's kind of who he is. But he's definitely a much more capable quarterback than anything we've seen from Russ. So that is definitely shocking because this team has been competitive, to say the least, with Jameis in there. And look, back to the Lions here real quick before we move on. I have real concerns about this team because this team just doesn't look like the Super Bowl contender that we've seen the last couple of years. Are they a good team? Yes, but I don't think they're that same team. This is a step back that I think we predicted, but it's starting to really show itself here. This O-line isn't what it used to be, and the defense has a 12.6% pressure rate, which is 9th worst in the NFL. They just simply do not put enough pressure on quarterbacks, and their offensive line doesn't protect Goff at the same level they used to. So I think there's real concerns about this team. I think they're a good team. They clearly look like a playoff team, but they don't look like one of those teams that could run all the way to the Super Bowl anymore. I mean, the Lions win, and I get that. It's a gritty win for them. But I have more questions than answers about Detroit right now.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think it's going to be important for them. And right now, Chicago's still leading the way, but it's going to be important for them to have some home playoff games because outside of that dome, I'm not sure, especially in the elements, not necessarily the snow, but just the cold in general, I'm not sure who they really are.
Speaking of the NFC North, Minnesota Vikings, Green Bay Packers end up winning this game 23-6. It's not even close. And look, I don't really feel like we need to break this game down. For me, this just comes back to one conversation only. It's that JJ McCarthy has been a mess. And this situation is really starting to go off the rails. And I have to wonder, Alex, how long before this actually starts to fracture the locker room in Minnesota? Because Justin Jefferson, after the game, said, quote, "It's frustrating to be up here and say the same things every single week." Quote, he also went on to say, "and expecting something to change the following week, and we're still in the same spot." I think we're really starting to see frustration from a lot of these veteran guys, and I think they have a real problem here with JJ McCarthy. The guy just isn't getting any better. They needed to see some kind of improvement from him, and if anything, it seems like he's actually getting worse. And this thing is totally off the rails now, Alex.
Yeah, you can go back to when we were breaking down the draft last year and where we ranked these quarterbacks. I had JJ McCarthy ranked last. I thought that everything for him to succeed, I thought that everything needed to be perfect around him. Dominant defense, perfect offensive line, dominant running game, and then he could succeed. He threw 19 passes. He was 12 for 19. But his average throw was 4.6. What does that tell you about Kevin O'Connell, who we saw turn Sam Darnold around last year? That means they're not throwing the ball down the field. They were dinking and dumping down the ball. They were not throwing the ball down the field at all. He hasn't been able to get the ball down the field with the level of weapons on his team. Jordan Addison didn't even have only had a target. But 87 yards, 4.6 average, and then 2 interceptions and 5 sacks for 35 yards. He was set up to get the ball out of his hands fast, still was sacked 5 times, 2 by Michael Parsons in case anybody wanted to know, but he still couldn't move the ball down the field. I never thought he was going to be a solid quarterback. I always give quarterbacks 3 years, but he is having a abysmal first year starting in this offense.
It's absolutely terrible. Look, I'm going to read the stats again that you just mentioned. 87 yards. 87 yards. No touchdowns, 2 picks, and those 5 sacks. He was atrocious, and the Vikings got shut out in the second half. They couldn't move the ball at all. And like I said, this is the only story that really matters coming out of this game. And once again, we have to look at this Vikings team. We kind of have to zoom out here because this Vikings team moved off of Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold for this guy. They were 14-3 last year. This was a team that had one of the best records in the NFL, and now they're a complete train wreck. And McCarthy, to your point, you said all the things he has to have. He has those. He has elite weapons. He has a great offensive line. He has a great offensive coach who has clearly shown the ability to elevate quarterbacks. And this has been a total mess in Minnesota. I think it's time that we look at the Vikings GM here as a guy who should be on the hot seat, because these are the types of decisions that get you fired in this league. Not to mention his horrible track record in the NFL draft to begin with, because this team is going nowhere fast. Alex, let's shift to Steelers, Bears. Steelers go up 14-7. Bears come back and win. And this was a pretty impressive win because this defense for the Bears has a ton of injuries. And look, I know Pittsburgh had Mason Rudolph under center, but this is another good win for the Bears. And it's kind of funny, Alex, because all those Caleb Williams haters from last year who were calling him a bust, they've been awfully quiet this year, Alex. I haven't really heard much from that crowd because this guy just keeps getting better every week. This might be the best I've seen him play as a pro. 239 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Also picked up some yards on the ground. He's spreading the ball around. He's making good decisions. He's getting the ball out faster, which is something that we know he needed to work on this year. He's clearly improved in that area. And right now, Alex, the Bears have a real coach, a real quarterback, and a real identity to build on. They've got to be really excited in Chicago.
The thing I'll say is that's very important about Caleb Williams. He doesn't turn the ball over. He may make the wrong read. He may make a bad throw, what have you. But the key thing is he does not turn the ball over. He has four interceptions. He had a bad fumble. Jesus, did he have a bad fumble in this game? That TJ Watt sack, and then in the end zone, and then he fumbles. I guess he was trying to throw to do something, but it counted as a fumble. They pick it up and score 7. I didn't understand that at all. But mainly for the most part, Caleb Williams does not throw interceptions. And I think that's key when you're coming along and you're trying to learn a new offense. You're not making key mistakes that put your team behind the sticks. It appears that he's been trying to work within this offense. You've mentioned several times, Brad, that you think it's a good offense. You just don't think it's a good offense for Caleb, who likes to play outside the pocket a lot more as opposed inside this structure and almost like a West Coast offense, just, quick bang, quick throws. He likes to work outside of structure a little bit, and there's not really a lot of plays that's designed for that. But it appears that he's been trying to work within the structure, not make big mistakes, and keep this team always in the hunt no matter what.
The only other thing I'll say is that the Steelers season is completely coming unraveled right now. And Mason Rudolph or Rodgers, I don't think it really matters, but now with him being injured, it certainly doesn't help. This is a team that had a really nice start to the year. They don't look like a playoff team at all. I'm completely out on the AFC North, Alex. I'm just out on this division. I don't think there's anybody in this division that scares you at all right now.
Yeah. I don't. I mean, and we can, the Ravens won against the Jets, but I could tell you two things. I actually just rewatched this game on the app, the condensed version. Lamar's hurt. There's something wrong with Lamar. I watched him have about a 7-yard separation to run the ball when it was on the 2nd and 6, and this was in the first quarter. He didn't take off to get the first down. Nobody was near him. He broke the pocket. He just stood there and then simply threw the ball away. Something is wrong with Lamar. We do not know what it is, but you're absolutely right. No one scares me in this division. I don't care who comes out of it.
Yeah, you're right. I'm starting to see those reports too, and I think you're right. I think Lamar is playing with something, and he clearly doesn't look like the same guy. I mean, I give him a lot of credit for coming back, trying to help this team, climb out of this hole that they were in. But yeah, they just don't look like the same team. He doesn't look like the same guy right now for sure. Now, speaking of quarterbacks, Sheduer Sanders gets his first start. Of course, this is the big story. Everybody's kind of been waiting to see what this guy can do. We saw kind of a rocky first appearance when he came in for Dylan Gabriel after the injury last week, but looked a lot better in this game versus the Raiders on the road, wins his first start for 20 passes, 209 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Not numbers that are going to blow you away. I thought he had some nice moments, had a nice deep ball in this game. I think it was really smart, though, that Stefanski ran some wildcat near the goal line, kind of took the ball out of Sanders' hands to help protect him in some crucial spots in this game. But overall, I thought he did a nice job. I'm kind of excited to see what we're going to get from him the rest of the season. It looks like he's going to start next week and at least give the Browns a legit chance to kind of evaluate both rookie quarterbacks this year so they know what they want to do in April at the draft. This is something we talked about when you've got these two guys. We knew this was kind of a throwaway year for the Browns, so they needed to get both these guys out on the field and kind of see what they have, because there's going to be a big decision for them to make in April as far as that position goes.
Right, especially they're more than likely going to be, I believe, with that rework of Deshaun's contract, they'll be able to get out of that contract. That'll be key as well. I agree with you with Sheduer. The ball looked a lot livelier coming off of his arm. He was pushing the ball down the field. And I think if they continue, he and Harold Fannin seem to have a really good connection. I'll just say this really conversely on the other side of the ball with my Raiders. The second domino has fallen. They have gotten rid of Chip Kelly. So we'll see how the rest of the season goes from here.
They're an absolute train wreck. This team might be the worst team in the NFL, honestly. Like, they are terrible. They fired Chip Kelly, and I get it, but to me, that felt like a desperation move from Pete Carroll, because I think his seat is getting hot and he knows it, and I think he's trying to save himself, but I don't think he's going to be able to. I think the next move is to get rid of Pete Carroll and completely rip the Band-Aid off. This experiment clearly did not work, and I think they've got to go in a completely new direction. I hate to say it. I know he's the face of the franchise and a great player, but it might be time to trade Max Crosby this offseason, get some draft picks, and just completely tear this thing down to the studs.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a State of the Raiders podcast, but I agree. I've said that 2 years ago that I would trade Max. I mean, there's a sobriety portion of why Max wanted to resign and stay in Las Vegas, which I commend him for. He shows up every game no matter what. Actually, that defense shows up, to be fair. That defense shows up, gets turnovers, and the offense has done absolutely nothing with it. But I was open to trading Max. If he wants to get traded, I would, 2 number ones and whatever else to make it happen. I'm all for it. If not, and he wants to stay because the way his life is set up to be successful, then he can stay, and I would build around Max and just go from there. But you can't, and I'll end it with this. You can't bring in, people are talking about Tom Brady. Tom Brady suggested John Spytek from Tampa Bay. We saw how the Tampa Bay was built. But then you can't go and get a coach that's trying to win immediately. Though the coach and GM are not on the same timeline. So you can't build a team when the coach is saying, oh, we're going to be in it next year. Because this is what he said in the press conference. But you brought in a GM that's about building an organization. The Raiders need to be, as you said, torn down to the stretch and rebuilt. Whereas Pete Carroll's mindset is, building right now and being ready to compete the following year. We didn't draft enough people where a Sean McVay can come in and make it happen. That's not the way our team is set up. So it's going to be very interesting in the offseason if they decide to retain Pete Carroll, because alas, that would be 4 coaches in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think if you bring him back, you're just kicking the can down the road, though. And I like Spytek as a GM, and I think he'll still be in place. I just think they've got to move on as far as the coaching staff goes and start over, because this thing has been a complete and total mess.
Hey, Brad, just really quick. The Jaguars are a Jekyll and Hyde team, and somebody needs to check Trevor Lawrence, his friends, and his family's bank account, because he's trying to give the game away at every single point that I watch. And he's trying to sabotage the Jaguars, and nobody can tell me different. No different than when Cowboys fans think that CeeDee Lamb is trying against the Eagles is trying to sabotage them. But Trevor Lawrence, the interceptions at the most inopportunistic times. This game should have not gone to overtime. In fact, the Cardinals should have won this game. I don't understand what Trevor Lawrence is doing. 3 touchdowns, then 3 interceptions. You could see the head coach on the sideline confused about throws that Trevor Lawrence was making that made absolutely no sense whatsoever for the throws that he was making when he threw those interceptions. I don't know. Jacksonville is currently 7-4. I did pick them to make the playoffs. But at this point, I still don't know. I don't know what's going on when I watch them. It's the weirdest thing in the world watching this team and watching Trevor Lawrence.
It's interesting that it was Jags Cardinals. I know Kyler did not play in this game, and he's been out. It looks like he's going to sit out the rest of the year. But I think these are 2 number 1 picks that are not going to be playing for these franchises next year. And I've already called that on Kyler Murray way in advance. I thought that was going to be the case for him. But I'm starting to think more and more they're going to move off Trevor Lawrence. Now, I think they're going to start taking calls for trades to see what they can do here, because I think somebody will still be interested in him because of the talent. Somebody's going to think that they can have a rebuilding project with this guy. But I've seen enough. And I think Liam Cohen's seen enough. And I think he's on the sideline. It looks like he wants to pull his hair out, Alex, when he watches this guy play. Because you're right, the decision-making, the things he's doing, you can't be doing these things when you're this far into your career. You just can't. Not when you're supposed to be a franchise guy, not when you're getting paid like a franchise guy, not when you were a number 1 pick. He's got to be better, and it's just not happening. He's just not taking those steps, and we've run out of excuses. He's had multiple coaches and multiple systems and multiple players that they put around him. He just isn't good enough. Like, we see flashes, we see the talent, I get that, but he's not a franchise guy you can build around and that you can trust week in, week out. And I will not be shocked at all if Jacksonville moves off of Trevor Lawrence. Is that crazy, or do you think that's a realistic possibility?
No, I think that's a realistic possibility. I don't think they'll do it next year. It should be the year after that. It's just a matter of the amount of money that they have invested in him, because as of right now, that contract that he signed hasn't even kicked in yet. Yeah, he's at the top of the food chain at $55 million, the second largest contract in quarterback history. So they can't get out of that deal. Well, I don't want to say they can't get out of it. They would need to have that deal hit so he can get some of that bonus, so it lessens the hit when they go forward, because they're a team that has a lot of talent. Let's not let that slip by. They're a team that has a lot of talent. And if you get a competent quarterback in there, there's some things that they will be able to do immediately, but it will cause them some issues if they try to get out of that contract. Right now it would be about, about $170 million in dead cap space.
Yeah, that's brutal. And once again, this is why I wouldn't have paid him when they paid him. I thought it was crazy then, and it really looks even worse now. Before we move on, we've got some college football to get to, but I want to give out this week's game ball, Alex. My game ball is going to go to Rams quarterback Matt Stafford. 25 for 35, 273 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He is playing at another level right now. He is playing with so much confidence. He made it look easy in this game. This game was over after the coin toss. A complete beatdown. He continues his streak of 308 straight passing attempts without an interception. Right now, this guy is running away with the MVP, and the Rams look like the best team in the NFL.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is also you have Devontae Adams, who statistically, when you look at yards and catches, may not show up there, but he's leading the league with 12 receiving touchdowns. 12.
When they get near the goal line and into the red zone, he has the best release in football.
Oh, hey, listen, you know how I feel about Devontae Adams.
And Stafford knows it. And in those short yardage, in those condensed formations in the red zone, he is so good. That release is so good. He gets open so quickly, and Stafford has so much trust in him. You know, Puka might be the big number guy, more of their chunk yardage guy and the guy that kind of gets the explosive plays in this offense. But in the red zone, Devontae Adams is the guy. And that's why the touchdown numbers don't shock me, because he looks Adams' way early and often, knowing that 9 times out of 10, he's going to get a free release and it's going to be an easy touchdown pass because, he's just still, this late in his career, still some of the best feet in the game. One big college football game, Alex, and look, the only really big college football game last weekend, and thanks to the SEC there, because they always play these cupcake FCS teams in late November instead of playing a ninth conference game like the rest of college football. But I'll get off my soapbox. But yeah, thanks to them, we didn't really have a whole lot to pick from last weekend. But we did have one big game in the Big Ten, college football playoff implications on the line. Oregon is now just a win away from going back to the college football playoff. And once again, USC comes up light in a big game under Lincoln Riley. And he said after this game, we are close. No, you are not, USC. I'm sorry. Look, I'll give you a lot of props. You've gotten better. This program has gotten better. And this is a talented team. It's a very talented team, especially offensively. And outside of Ohio State, it might be the best wide receiver group in the country. But you are not close. And this game showed me that if you're trying to measure up against your West Coast rival and you're trying to measure up against these teams that are actual contenders, you're not there.
You know what, Brad? Let me just be honest. This entire college season, with the exception of a few players, defense aside, I'm not talking about defense. If I'm rating quarterbacks and I'm looking at, I don't know what I'm looking at. You know, you get Fernando Mendoza. He looks like a guy, but other than that, I'm confused on who all of these supposed guys that are looking at coming out. I'm confused with all of them. I don't know what's real and what's fake as of right now. I don't know who I trust. I don't know who, not necessarily a guy. I don't know who's competent at the next level. I'm completely confused with these quarterbacks across the board.
Well, I think Jaden Maiava is a guy who's a much improved quarterback. As far as a pro prospect, I still think there's some development that needs to happen there. I think Dante Moore is a very intriguing pro prospect, but he doesn't have the starts under his belt. And I think there's a lot of talk, and there's some sources that I have heard that said it's basically a lock that he is coming back to Oregon next year, which I think is a really smart choice because I think he needs more game reps. I think he needs more experience. And I think next year, the following draft, he could be a guy that's in the mix as one of the top quarterbacks coming out. But it's weird, Alex, because you're right. This quarterback class, it went from looking really, really strong, and then we had some really big-name guys in the preseason that just didn't live up to expectations. Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier, those were all guys that were kind of seen as potential first-round picks, and all of them fell to the wayside here. And now a guy like Fernando Mendoza, I don't want to say comes out of nowhere, but kind of did, and is now kind of in the mix. But when you've got guys like Ty Simpson, Dante Moore, and some of these other top quarterbacks, Julian Sand at Ohio State, I think most of these guys are going to be coming back to college. So it's not going to be a very deep quarterback class. And you could be right. I think we're just looking at some really good quarterbacks that still have some growth. But, you know, when I look at this Ducks team and this program and kind of the differences between these games, the score I don't think actually reflects how much better Oregon was in this game because there were so many penalties for Oregon. Now, USC had a lot too. But Oregon played a pretty sloppy game. And if you look at the penalties, there was some really iffy offensive play calling at times on some crucial third and fourth downs that cost them. It's some poor execution on some of those plays. If Oregon plays a clean game, I think they probably win by 4 touchdowns. I mean, they were just so much better than this USC team. It was so obvious that even USC kind of hung around. Watching this game, it never felt like USC was going to be able to get control of this game. And the one thing that really stood out to me is this Ducks defense, I thought, played great. And this is an explosive offense, and they completely shut down the run. And this USC team had been really running the ball well. They took that away. 2 interceptions from the secondary. Now, USC did move the ball through the air, but there were a lot of contested catches in this game. Oregon's DBs were making it difficult on these wide receivers. These guys weren't just running wide open, catching, open streaking plays down the middle of the field. Like, these guys were making tough catches, a lot of tough catches in this game versus good coverage. So I actually thought the Ducks defense was pretty impressive versus this unit. Ducks offense on the other side, very, very good considering that Oregon was down their top 3 wide receivers in this game. Multiple injuries to the offensive line. They lose one of the best centers in the game in the middle of this game, but they have one of the deepest running back rooms in the country right now that they could lean on, and they've got the best tight end in the country, and I don't think it's even close. I mean, that guy is just something else. Kenyon Sadiq is something else. He's a first-round talent for sure. And once again, I think this quarterback, Dante Moore, is still one of the better quarterbacks in the country. I mean, big picture here, Alex, I just think this was a major gut punch to USC from their West Coast rival, because we are now 4 years into the Lincoln Riley era at USC, and this has to be graded as a failure. I mean, look at this program. USC has the money. They have the recruiting ground. I mean, you could throw a football out of LA Coliseum any direction and hit a 5-star player. They have the buy-in from everybody in this program. They paid Lincoln Riley $120 million to leave Oklahoma. Now, I get that they have the number 1 recruiting class next year, and that's great. But this rebuild for them has been slow and painful, and especially for Trojan fans, when you look at Oregon, who continues to look like a top 5, top 5, top 6 program in all of college football right now, and USC can't even make the playoffs. To me, the gap is bigger than the scoreboard.
Yeah, and if you look at them the last 4 years, so they had 1 year with Caleb Williams where they landed 10th. The next year they didn't have a ranking at all in terms of the top 25. Then the year after that, nothing at all. And as of right now, they're 15th. And with this loss, they'll probably drop. The rankings come out. The CFP rankings come out Tuesday, so I'm pretty sure they're going to drop anywhere between 3 to 4 spots, where they'll end up around 20th for the most part, or 19th, and be out of the playoffs going forward. So I'm not sure where they're trying to go from there. I get the money. Sometimes I get the school, but you have to have some type of foresight, as you need to really forecast out where you should be, and money should not be the driving force, because you can get money. Oklahoma would have paid Lincoln Riley to stay. Now, they may not have paid as much as California, but California, those 41% taxes, you still would have made more money staying in Oklahoma. You got to forecast out where you're going and how that looks for you as a coach, and what your plans are as a coach in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and I'm starting to wonder if is he just a great play caller and a great play designer, or is he a culture builder? Is he a guy that can really build this culture and build this program into what it needs to be? Because, look, we know he's a great offensive mind. We know he puts a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL and has a whole lot of Heisman trophies and wide receivers that go to the NFL. Like, we get that. He's been doing that for years. But now in the Big Ten especially, you have to have a certain level of toughness, physicality. You have to be able to win in the trenches. You have to be able to run the ball, and you got to be able to stop the run. And those are still big question marks for this program. And it just makes you wonder, is he the kind of guy that can do that? Can he shift this program to the next gear? Because this was a huge opportunity. This was a huge opportunity to beat a team like that, a tough, physical, Big Ten style of team in Oregon. I know Oregon's new to the Big Ten too, but they're built like a Big Ten team. They were built like one going into the conference. USC wasn't. And now USC is kind of trying to adjust on the fly. And I just wonder how much patience they're going to have with him. Now, it's a lot of money, so, I don't know if they really want to do anything drastic here and make any changes right now, especially when you do have the number 1 recruiting class. It sounds like they're going to give him some more time, but, man, that's got to be a really crushing loss, because this could have been a big program-changing win for them, and instead it feels like another setback.
So, listen, real quick, I'll just say this. He left, and in 4 years, Oklahoma is 8th. And
yeah, that doesn't help.
And USC is sitting outside the college football playoffs as we stand right now.
Yeah, because let's face it, Brent Venables felt like a consolation prize. I mean, when he came over from Clemson, I think there was a lot more question marks, because you're going from this high-flying offense and Lincoln Riley, what he did, to this defensive-minded tough guy. But look, that defense and that team is in the playoff mix, and USC isn't. And I think Oklahoma fans have got to be sitting back grinning right now thinking, wow, this really worked out for us, because you're absolutely right. That makes this look even worse right now with Oklahoma doing what it's doing. So yeah, wasn't a whole lot of college football to get to. I think that was the big highlight game that we needed to talk about. But I got to give out my college football helmet sticker, Alex. Mine's going to go to Notre Dame cornerback Leonard Moore. This guy had a 46-yard pick six, a pass deflection, and a tackle. One of the best cornerbacks in the entire country, and he was lights out again in coverage. I mean, this guy is fun to watch. I'm really going to be excited to look at his tape more come April, because I think he's going to be a first-round pick. They destroy Syracuse 70-7. Notre Dame blew the doors off him in this one. But yeah, big shout out to Leonard Moore, one of the best corners in the country.
Brad, mine is going to go to a game that most people probably didn't watch, the Utah Utes versus the Kansas State Wildcats, 51-47, a complete shootout. Devin Dampier, he had a total of 353 yards and 4 touchdowns, 259 passing and 2, and then another 94 rushing and 2, as the Utes beat the Kansas State Wildcats 51-47. But I also want to give a big shout out to Joe Jackson from the Kansas State Wildcats, 24 carries, 293 yards, and 3 touchdowns, keeping this game fun and energetic throughout all 4 quarters.
Okay, so I know the state of Utah already hates this podcast because of your hatred for BYU, and now I know they're probably going to hate me because I'm going to say something that's also not going to be very popular with the Utah Utes fans. When I look at those 2 Utah teams, I know they're good teams, and I don't want to take anything away from what they've done this year. They're both very good teams. But watching that game versus Kansas State and the struggles that we have seen with them defensively and some of their inefficiencies, and what we've seen from BYU, who's a good team, but they get crushed by Texas Tech, who, Texas Tech, I think, is really the class of the Big 12. I know BYU and Utah are kind of in the discussion right now. They're directly in the mix to make the CFP, but I don't think either one of them belongs. I really don't. These teams do not feel like playoff teams, Alex. I mean, am I wrong? I just don't see it with either one of these Utah teams.
You shouldn't be struggling with 5 and 6 Kansas State. I'm sorry. And let alone letting a running back run for almost 300 yards. I haven't believed them for a couple of years. I guess I thought they had something. The quarterback escapes my mind at the moment. I thought they could have had something, but they don't. So I don't know why they're number 12 outside of just the other teams have just fallen off. BYU is a whole other situation, but I don't have the disdain for Utah the way that I have it for BYU. But apparently Brad does. Direct all of your tweets to him.
Yeah, I'm sure we've lost an entire state that used to listen to this show now. That whoever was left is now gone. Guys, that is going to do it for today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it, PGF Nation. Make sure you hit the like button, hit that subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. We appreciate you guys for tuning in and checking out the show. Once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pint Glass Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at PGF Podcast.